What's the next stage?
Welcome back to the Media Guys Lokova show with me, Media Guys Lokova. We are finally back with Katekyo Hitman Reborn, talk about its second major arc, the Kokuyo gang arc. This is a very important arc for the series, all things considered, as it begins a proper shift into the type of content that's remembered for and loved for by fans and outsiders alike. But is its change from a lighthearted comedy manga with likable cast and interesting ideas to a much darker action manga even good? That's where we're here to figure that out. This video is going to be a little different from the last, because instead of talking about the arc overall, what I did last time, we're going to be more talking about events and character moments as they happen. You get that? I hope you do, because I'm not repeating it. Anyway, let's start out with the beginning of the story. We start out the arc with our boy Ryohei already getting packed up by two members of the titular Kokuyo gang, those being Ken and Chikusa. This is one attack in a string of attacks towards students of Namimori, where they beat people up and steal their teeth. So as you can guess, Suna trying to stay out of that as much as he possibly can. But thankfully for him, Hibari is on the case. Remember in the last video, as I said, Hibari is literally undefeatable? Nobody normal is touching this guy. Well, sadly for him, the guy he's fighting ain't normal. As for the infiltration of the Kokuyo base, we finally meet the main villain of the arc, the eccentric Mukuro Rokudo, defeating Hibari quite easily with his weird abilities. Yeah, Suna's doomed, but to put more stress on our boy, Reborn figures out that somehow they got a list from that ranking kid, Fuda. With this list, they attack all the strongest ranked people in Namimori, with Gokudera and Yamato being the very next targets on that list. So Suna goes to find Gokudera. Chikusa already putting my boy on a t-shirt. Then Porcupine Yo-Yo is dangerous. Yamamoto comes in and saves him thankfully. The damage has already been done. Suna once again doesn't know what to do. He knows he probably can't fight Mukuro on his own if people like Hibari getting dropped by them, especially since they only have one dying will bullet left. But he knows he can't do nothing, as the only reason anyone's getting hurt is that the gang wants to attack him specifically. The responsibility of his unwanted role as a Mongola leader reaping its ugly head once again. But with Reborn's encouragement, alongside Gokudera, Yamamoto, and Bianchi by his side, he takes on responsibility and heads to Kokuyo land. Now this is where I think the weakest part of the arc is. The before Kokuyo Lane section I think is a really good way to shift the tone and focus of the story. All the characters we were told are decent fighters getting folded, a glimpse at our arc's main villains and their weird abilities, Suna having to grapple with the fact that due to being the chosen next in line to be Vongola boss, comes with consequences he just has to suck up for the betterment of the people he cares about, all just really good storytelling. But once we get to this mini boss section, as I call it, I just think it's not as good. Essentially, this is the point of the story where the writer has the characters just be fighting anybody to pad out the runtime. Sometimes it's gonna be pretty cool, but I don't find the fights to be particularly strong here. Which, to be fair, this is the first time the writer is dipping their toes into this, at least with the series. So the fights not being the best is sorta understandable. But I do think the character work they do here does a lot to boost Suna's character, as it really shows his greatest strength despite how weak he usually is physically, that being how compassionate of a guy he can be. So just when he worries that Yamamoto going to potentially miss out on the next big baseball game due to being injured in his fight against Ken with the power to mimic different animals through mouthpieces. Another example of this can be seen in the conflict with Birds and his two weird partners, where Suna has to suffer in front of this creepy old man in order to protect Kyoko and Haru. Then we get to the main show of this, which is the fight between Suna and Mukuro Rokudo. Except not actually. After the fight against Ken, Reborn shows us a picture of the Kokuyo gang, and this guy is called Mukuro, which is weird because we already know what he looks like. But after Suna beats him up and gives him mercy to this thing how good-hearted of a guy he is, this guy named Lancia actually tells his backstory. For 5 years, Lancia has been going on a murder spree of mafia families, with Mukuro controlling him the entire time, which is not only really messed up, but gives us more reason to hate and fear Mukuro. Because what makes Mukuro able to control people in the way that he does, and why is he doing it? But with even more resolve to kick Mukuro's teeth in, Suna and the gang, sans Yamamoto, because Lancia did a number on him, walk into the final battle against Mukuro, i.e. the peak of the arc. When the gang gets inside, things are already looking kinda dire. Gokudera getting ganged up on by Chikusa and Ken. Mukuro got Fuda out here trying to beat up Suna. Just chaos. But after Suna is able to free Fuda from Mukuro's brainwashing, we finally get a better understanding of Mukuro's abilities. That being he has the ability to create illusions based on the 6 past reincarnation and represented in his eyes. Kind of a weird reference, but will make more sense in a bit. But meanwhile, Gokudera finally freed Hibari, and he does quick work of Mukuro. The gang can finally go home and put this battle beside them. Except for Psyche, as Mukuro pulls a gun on himself, seemingly killing himself right in front of the gang. But it's soon revealed that this is another trick of Mukuro. That being that, like Suna, he uses special bullets as well. In his case being the possession bullet, which as the name says, allows him to possess people. creating what I think is a thematic parallel between Suna and Mukuro, that being how they view other people. Mukuro can only see people as objects to his own goals, seeing clearly by his own abilities of illusions and possession, or essentially tricking and manipulating people. Nobody matters to him, as they're all toys that he can use to accomplish his goals. While Suna isn't like that at all. Suna only fights because he cares so much for the people around him, the people that Mukuro harms through his actions, seen by how his ability is literally his overwhelming desire to try and help others, overtaking his entire mind. So when Suna decides on a dying will without the need of one of the dying will bullets, a new bullet is created, known as the Reborn bullet. When this bullet is shot inside of Suna, he no longer needs to be taken over by desires, but instead sees the criticism and feelings of all the people he cares about. From his mom criticizing him for not cleaning up his room, Kyoko and Ryohei's other faith that he'll come back alive. All of this allows him to transform into Hyper Dying Will mode, a calmer and more collective fire than the base Dying Will mode ever was, even being able to properly use the flames he emits in his attacks with the X-Buffs he gained with this form. Also, shout out to the anime with the track they used for this moment, that being Suna's Awakening, which is just a banger track and does a really good job hyping you for the moment when he finally, awakens. But yeah, with this, Mukuro is defeated for good this time. But as that happens, we learn something about the Kokuyo gang. And this thing creates another connection between him and Suna, that being that they were both screwed over by the very nature of the Mafia world. Again, Suna is only fighting against Mukuro because he's the next in line to be leader of the Mongola. It's something he has no control over, and was essentially decided since his birth, with Suna just having to cope with it the best way he can. Which makes the fact that he manifested Hyper Dying Will mode in the first place during this battle all the more important, as it shows the fact that Mukuro triggered him so much by hurting his friends and using people as tools that he evolved into this next level. Base Suna couldn't take that anymore. Base Suna had to come to his own resolve and resolution in order to kick Mukuro's teeth in, just because of how bad of a person and how reprehensible Suna thought he was. Represented by the fact that Hyper Dying Will mode doesn't make him essentially fully consumed with his desire, instead much more control, because it's much more representative of the base present desire in Suna, instead of his more instinctual desires as shown in Dying Will mode's uses in the daily life arc. With Mukuro being put in a similar situation, as the reason he has the 6-pass reincarnation ability and the possession bullet is that his Mafia family experimented upon him. The group that was supposed to raise him and take care of him instead turned into a weapon. The only way he knew how to cope with that being destroying the Mafia world in revenge by killing people. Which, while that doesn't justify any of his actions, it makes his actions more understandable and honestly sad. Especially when you think about things like his whole 6-pass reincarnation thing in the first place, as that is a Buddhist concept which deals with the idea that when you die, you can be put in different types of afterlife depending on what you did in life. Which, when a guy's entire ability to essentially possess people and become them, makes the fact that he has it as an ability to essentially be a coping method. That way his mind can keep track of the idea that he has been technically so many people and himself at the same time. Even worse when the fact that the people that he becomes is his friends, and how openly he's willing to use them as tools when he essentially has no reason to, essentially recreating the cycle of violence that's got him to the point where he is now. But in the end, is the Kokuyo gang arc of Katekyo Hitman Reborn even good? I would say yes. While not being the greatest story ever told, or having the best fights, I think it does a good job of having a really interesting, intimidating villain in Mukuro, and doing a lot to show off the strengths of Suna as a character, which I appreciate. It even starts delving into some of the themes of the series, such as the destructive nature of the Mafia world, that all our characters operate under in some regard, which will only be emphasized even more with the next arc, the Varia arc. But until then, see you in another review, from hopefully just as positive.